a lot of conscious, quote unquote conscious rappers, I don't think practice the craft of MCing, and they just have all this information they just want to get out. Where me and Gio, I think we come from the MC side of things and then found our way into organizing. Frustrating thing about Ferguson for me is that this has been happening for a long time. Those emotions have never left me. Since the first time I heard about Amadou Diallo, since the first time I heard about kids in the neighborhood getting beat up by police, that feeling has never left. So to see it in Ferguson, it was like, okay, yeah, another one. You know what I mean? And shortly after that, there were like a whole bunch more. The reaction that St. Louis and Ferguson had to the people out in the street, that was the alarming part to me. It was like, wow, they don't give a shit. Like, they're still out there doing this. You know, not only they're fighting the people who are challenging them on this, they're shooting at them. You know, that is a whole thing I'm still processing. I've been on the road, unfortunately. So like, I haven't been around my folks to process all of this, but we do recognize that obviously that this is a systemic issue, like I always say, you know, and that is something that we need to challenge on that level as opposed to just taking care of Darren Wilson, even though we do need to arrest that man and put him in jail for, you know, for the murder he committed. The most important and significant thing about Party Worker to me was that it was people powered and that people came out of their own pockets, their hard-earned money, to help me make this record without the label. That to me is the most important. What happened after that was, you know, me and DJ Factrick sat in a lab and I actually wrote 3 different albums. I dissected the title Party Worker, I took the word party and I made a party album, it was horrible. And then I made a straight worker album, which is very socialist, and that just felt too contrived and too like beat you over the head with politics. And then I put the 2 together, and what I really wanted to capture was the work as an MC, which is what we do. You know, the DJ is the party and we're the party worker. We make sure we get out there, the folks are having a good time, and you know, we get them involved in the music. And so I really wanted to tackle it from that vantage point. And then I said, what would it look like if rappers were organized and rappers had their own grassroots people's organization? What would that look like? And that's kind of the face of Party Worker was. Recently we met a guy in North Carolina who makes beats, 40-something years old, had to move back in with his parents. Him and his wife lived in separate homes because they had to lose their house. You know, and he loves making music. Those kind of things made me say, man, we got to speak about this because this growing this growing gap between the rich and the poor is ridiculous at this point. It wasn't the organizers, it was the people I saw on the ground who it was affecting that really made me want to say, you know, talk about things like progressive taxation and things like that. We organized a lot of college youth for a long time. College youth tend to move on after they're done with, you know, they're rebellious, like, you know, I'm militant for, you know, until I'm a senior, and then they go get a corporate job. That's always affected me in a special way, you know, because I like watching people blossom, and then, you know, so the way I navigated around that is we went deeper into the youth sector and started doing high school youth and things like that and getting them mobilized, and then, you know, working with folks that people wouldn't necessarily organize, gang members, you know, kids who are just kind of doing knuckleheaded stuff, grabbing those youth, and those end up becoming our greatest, you know, assets, our greatest organizers. It's interesting because organizing in the Philippines is different. They have a house that houses all the organizers, everybody eats, it's very communal. So eating and surviving, you know, monetarily is at the bottom of the list, and organizing can be your priority. In this country, it's like completely flipped. It's like organizing is almost a hobby because you have to eat, you have to figure out how you're gonna survive and living here. So that's the struggle right now. I am a laugh through the pain kind of guy. I take a lot of my cues from comedians. Comedians have a way of speaking on social issues, making you laugh, but making you think about it at the same time. And rap is like that. Rap is very tongue-in-cheek. You know, you hear a lot of serious rappers and it kind of goes over people's heads and it's not enjoyable to listen to. My job is to speak the language of the youth and lure the youth with that casting the net. What I just did on stage was me casting the net. You say fuck the police, it doesn't stop there. You know, when we actually say fuck the police, we're talking about a systemic issue. We're not just talking about one individual police officer, a few individuals. We're talking about laws that are in place that subject people to police brutality and letting these police get away with it. So fuck the police is the easiest way to grab those kids. Same thing with humor. You know, you get a person to laugh at the shit that might be real, and then you lure them in and say, okay, now we need to fix that. This experience with an artist like Brother Ali is life-changing. I've been on several tours, but this is the first tour where we have van meetings where we treat it like an organizational meeting. We'll have criticisms and self-criticisms and check-ins, and you know, we talk about each other on the tour, we check each other. I mean, this is the first tour I've ever been on like that, and I'm learning so much. We had planned on it for a while. The initial talk was like Brother Ali, Killer Mike, and me. Killer Mike ended up, Run the Jewels ended up like exploding on the scene. So obviously he was like, yo, I'm out. He's actually in town right now. But Ali and I were still very interested. You know, I love Ali. I've always loved that brother's work, you know what I mean? Forrest Whitaker, which is a very popular song, was something that challenged the status quo. There are a lot of white people that come to these shows. But if you know Ali's music, then you should know what you're getting into, is what the way I figure it when I walk on that stage. You know, it does concern me because they're not, I'm very spoiled coming from the West Coast. You know, we do shows, it's a bunch of brown people, not a whole lot of white people. My first experience with all white crowds was the Blue Scholars tour. But obviously if you're a Blue Scholars fan, you kind of know the line that Gio and Sabzi are pushing. And I worried a little bit about that with Ali, but it's been wonderful, man. We haven't had any crazy incidences on tour. I haven't had anybody challenge me in the wrong way. My dad was, you know, immigrant man, gun fanatic from the Philippines. You know, he was a gun fanatic back then. He got here, he joined the NRA. He didn't know any better. He taught us how to respect guns, taught us about, you know, how to handle guns. Growing up in Los Angeles, that was, you know, just around. We used guns all the time. And then in the military, of course, I was in the military and that was my whole life. I use it symbolically almost as a means of self-defense, as a means of power. The Black Panthers use that very literally as their symbol of power. You have guns, I have guns too. So let's level the playing field, but we're using these guns in self-defense. And so I still carry that. So when I talk about a gun, when I talk about someone getting shot in the head, I say it in songs, you know, that's not why I carry a gun. It's for the infiltrators trying to see me put down. Like, it's not to kill my own people, it's to defend my people against the people who want to do harm to us.
Keep the pork from out my rice. Immigration ain't an issue for the right, cause it ain't right to have the right to keep the laws in favor of the job creator. When the job creator ship a factory for cheaper labor, labor low enough to keep the people quiet and complacent. When the money's getting spent right on the soil that's adjacent to the place where they are starving. So hop